Leaders in Purpose with me, your host, Miss CC Alexander. We so much thank you for joining us. We want to thank the KPAO staff and crew and everyone that works with them to make this possible. And we want to thank our fans, our friends, and loved ones. Today we have a wonderful show that we're going to be doing today. Besides doing prayer and having a session where we honor the ancestors, we're going to be talking to Mr. Alan Black. We're also going to be asking the Illuminati a question, as well as giving an answer to a situation, to the situation that's going on right now, which is guerrilla warfare being put upon communities of color and along with racism. So we're going to talk about those issues today. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Before we get started, let's go ahead on and I want you to get together your prayer requests and go ahead on and think about them, and as well as think about those who have died during this pandemic that we're in right now, as well as going through police brutality, suicide, and so many other things. Me been walking in the power of God ever since for years, which has led me through a whole lot of negative and positive things, but it's all been to my good. I want to thank God for being able to believe that we as a people with the power of God, we can fix the situations that's going on right now. So let's go ahead and give a moment of silence to our ancestors and those who believe in righteousness. To all. Thank you so much. Before we have our wonderful guest here, Brother Alan Black, and I'm sure a lot of you know him, and those of you who do know him know that he's a wonderful, amazing person. I mean, we talked before the show, and we had such an amazing time. It was just wonderful. Before we get to that, let me go ahead and ask the Illuminati this question. And the reason why I'm going to address the Illuminati is because I was asked to belong to the Illuminati. When I went and I looked at their website, I saw that it was a website of billionaires who are quote unquote hoarding money. And because of your power, billionaires, I'm asking you to make me your charity so that we can stop the brutality and things that are going put upon not only a melanated nation, but also the other things that are going on in the world that I believe that you, with your power and money, can do. So before we go ahead and continue on that, let's go ahead on and talk to Brother Alan Black, and here's his answer to some of the things that are going on. If you work with, you follow Leaders in Purpose, we work with several categories: health, education, cultural development, human rights, human services, economic development, political education, spiritual enlightenment, and miscellaneous. We also have music on Facebook. And Brother Alan Black, he's coming in with his gift and talent and working in these areas, in a lot of areas, with his own ministry. And I'm calling him, to me, he's Black Wall Street Midwest style, because he's bringing himself as his own businesses, and here is some fruit of his labor. So Brother Alan, hey, welcome.
Well, I'm not sure if I can live up to all that kind of introduction. I'm sweating already, CC, but thank you, and thank you, KPAO, for the honor to be here this afternoon. I'm very, very honored to be here today.
Oh, I'm so glad that you're here. Brother, how are you working to fix the things that are going on in this earth today through those categories that we talked about? When I look at it, I see you're dealing with spiritual enlightenment, but you're also dealing with health in the mental field as well as education. How are you working to, how is your fruit of your labor here going to help us during this horrible time, or this time that we're in right now? And what would you call this time that we're in?
I think we're in a time right now, if we are going to, or at least I can only speak for myself, if we're going to be honest, this is going to be a time of testing. That's where we are. I don't think it's just by coincidence that we went into 2020, a new decade, and in doing so, we're seeing everything that's unfolding as such right now. To me, what this is going to involve from each individual is going to be what I consider to be a holistic commitment. One of the things that the pandemic has certainly kind of brought to the forefront is the overall impact that something like this can have on us as a society, and particularly us as a people. We're not just talking about the economics, because certainly that has been impacting without question. But some of the other things that are not being spoken about, and you hear whispers of it, or I've heard whispers of it, are going to be things like, how is it affecting us physically in terms of our health? How is it affecting us in terms of our mental health? Those things are all a composite of who we are as human beings. And so at this point in time, I think what's important is that we are trying to be as proactive as possible to address each of those areas so that you can almost strengthen yourself to the point where you know you're going to go through trials and tribulations. We know that. All of us have lived to a certain point that we know that's just a part of the journey. But you're going to have to strengthen yourself to understand that even with this pandemic situation, which is now kind of almost had a perfect storm collision with, say, what's going on in the country in terms of what I call the George Floyd impact. So what we're starting to see now, at least as I'm seeing this, is there's going to need to be a commitment on everybody to be as proactive as possible to address those areas that you know that you have a concern about. Just as an example, if you know you have health issues as such, you've got to be proactive. We know that we as a people have tended to be more so reactive than we've been proactive, but we're in a time and a period now that I think we have to be as proactive as we possibly can be, because one thing I have learned through my journey up to this point at my current age of 65, you can have everything in the world that you want, but if you don't have your health, you don't have anything.
That's true.
You could have $3 trillion, but if you're in poor health, what's it really benefiting you?
That's true.
So I've tried to make it a point to be as proactive as I can these last 5 to 6 years or so with my health. Also, in terms of the mental health side, this pandemic and what we're dealing with in terms of the issues of racism and oppression in this country, it's going to impact us mentally and spiritually. But one thing that I'm very adamant about is staying as positive as you can. And it's not going to be easy. Let's not fool ourselves. But what are you reading? Are you reading something that's encouraging, that's uplifting? Are you around people that are going to be uplifting and encouraging you? You have to have something coming in my opinion, that's going to be positive as much as possible on a daily basis. Because if it's all the negativity that's coming in, then that's going to start the process of beginning to tear you down. I was talking with a very close friend of mine, and she pointed out that one thing that we have to do, particularly at a time like this with everything that's going on, there comes a point, Cece, we need to turn the TV off. Because you can only take in so much of what you're hearing on the news, and at some point it could potentially push you over to the edge where you're just in such a state of despair that you just think there's no hope. And so the news is geared in this country, the media is geared toward always emphasizing and highlighting as much as possible the things that are sensational, that grab the headlines. A lot of that is going to be geared toward the things that are negative. So there is that need, I think, on our part to say, okay, I can listen to the news up to a certain point, but then after that, I've got to turn it off. Because all that negativity coming in, it has to come out, and it will come out in some capacity at some point in time. So I think that's going to be important for us. And again, who are you surrounding yourself with? Like-minded people who have a vision like you do, or who are inspiring you to do better and to go further.
So you've talked about health, you've talked about education, culture development, well, not cultural development yet, but a lot of health, physical health, and also mental health.
Mental health.
And then also dealing with what's going on around us and keeping ourselves, encouraging ourselves.
Absolutely.
As the Bible talks about, that is kind of a culture. There is a culture. You can have a culture around you of peace, and because you have that culture of peace, you do whatever it takes to bring forth peace when it comes inside, and dealing from the inside to the out as well.
And with that culture that you're referring to that you create, I've always felt like at a certain point, I can say this now in terms of the age that I'm at and the season that I'm in, I hear all the negative things and I see them, and they're very distressing. But I'm trying to keep almost like a hedge around me as much as possible so that I don't get to the point where it just almost consumes you to the extent where you just feel like you're going to lose it, like I said before, like you don't have any hope.
Okay.
Doesn't mean I'm not aware of what's going on, because what I'm seeing now in terms of the racism in the country, I've been seeing that for the last 40, 45 years or so.
And I
this
understand that.
That's nothing new.
Well, it's nothing new still for us to have lynchings, actual lynchings of melanated people in California. California, in Houston and other areas of the United States of America, lynchings. We have men or women, who knows, who are actually riding around taking a rope and hanging people. Now, if you look at the history of the United States of America, there was a guerrilla warfare. This guerrilla warfare reigned for 400 years during the Jim Crow era. And in 2020, this is back and it's being called suicide. Yeah. America, no. We are a nation. We say that we're a Christian nation. Everywhere you go, everybody's knocking on the door. God is love. God is love. Where is that God of love? Is God just love in the church? Is God just love in our own group? You know, we're going to talk about that on the next show, because I believe we as a people, I'm a minister. I'll bring my little credentials if you want to see them. But I believe we as a people, we've lost a focus. And we're so busy dwelling on Democrat or Republican or homeowner or non-homeowner or middle class that we forgot basics. And those basics are what? Our 10 Commandments. You know, also I'm gonna go over some basics that are just in Genesis. Just Genesis alone. You know, I think police brutality in a nation that has built is it a facade, but its reputation on love, for police brutality to reign, and then from that comes the birth of the KKK again, and nothing, and the AFL-CIA, someone has mentioned that they're going to call them a terrorist group when they're actually they're coming up against those who are lynching and saying stop. But you're going to tell the answer to when somebody says, you know, I want to fight back, they're the terrorists. United States of America, who in the world can we police with such a history? Who can we tell what to do? Who can we stand up in a meeting at the United Nations or in any church and say we are a country of love, America, and you're allowing lynching, actual lynching. In 2020, you're allowing that. You voted a president in who you knew would do that. So to me, to deal with the people of so low self-esteem and so have such a low regard for life, I think racism should be one of the highest mental health, be so high on a mental health disorder, because it's killed more people than love, sickness. Racism which is economic disparity. That's the true meaning of racism. So, but I'm glad you have your books. We have about 5 minutes, but here's some books that our brother has put forth so that we can handle these things. You go ahead and tell us about it.
Thank you. I have been on a journey as a writer probably for about 40 years. It wasn't really until about 5 years ago that the Lord led me in the direction of becoming a Christian writer. Never expected to do this under no circumstance. The first book that I wrote is called Here I Am, Lord. And this one came out in the summer of 2017. And that was a journey in and of itself, just to get to the point of writing the first book. The book is essentially just some very short narrative type of essays about everyday things, because I'm convinced that in terms of how we're going to get through every day, It's going to be reflections, it's going to be the basic things, the things that you were taught coming up as a child, the foundational things. Those are the things that are going to help us to weather the storm, any storm that you're going to be going through in life. No, it's not going to be easy, again, but you go back to the foundational things that you were taught, and those are what I call the rocks that you kind of hold on to, and that's what sustains you through the process of all this. The second book is called In the Spirit Intended. This one is probably the one book that really kind of caught me off guard, because after I had written my first book, I basically told the Lord that I was through writing. I had other things I needed to do, and he was like, no, you don't. Don't even worry about it. I got more stuff for you to do. So,
All right now.
and I released this one in the summer of 2019, and I've been very blessed to say that this particular book here, actually, I was certified as a best-selling author on Amazon in July of 2019. So it's been an amazing journey.
That's wonderful.
It's a journey that continues because I have a third book concept in mind, but I'm a product of this city. I'm a product of a neighborhood where people were there beyond my parents. You know, we talk about it takes a village to raise a child, and I'm a product of that, without question, because for me to get to this point, it wasn't just my parents or my relatives, it was a community, it was a village that has sustained me and got me to this point. I think that as we go through what we're going through, we go back to those basic concepts of that village that's there for us, the village that will tell you this is a good thing to do, or the village that will say, no, don't do that. I heard that all the time growing up as a child, and I didn't understand it then, but now I understand why they were saying do certain things and don't do certain things, and I'm very, very grateful to my community that did that, my ancestors that did that, because I think now the time and the season that we live in, I always think about the fact that, and I can trace back in my own family roots, where back in 1834, my great-great-great-great-great-grandfather was a slave, and he and his wife escaped in the middle of the night from Arkansas, and they moved up to Missouri. That's how they got away from their slave master. And so my family roots trace back to Arkansas. And I often think about the fact that all they went through was for a purpose and for a reason, and they made it through.
Right.
And so our call and our challenge today is to continue to honor that legacy that they established by continuing to press forward, and to do so because we have a responsibility to do so. And the next generation is watching us to see how we're going to handle the storm that we're in now, because they look to us and they're going to see, well, if Miss Cece made it or if Alan made it through, then I know that I have that opportunity. I can make it through as well.
And that's so true. We tell each generation that each generation is supposed to be better.
Exactly.
And so I'm calling
Exactly.
my generation and your generation, let us not leave the fight of racism to this generation and the next generation. Let's do all that we can. Our young people are being dead in the street over territories that they don't even land, they don't even own. Let us take, and this because of racism, which is financial disenfranchisement. So what we're going to talk about later on is how you take this Bible that the KKK and other racist entities have used to say that it says that, which it does say that black people are cursed, and that we are we're cursed and we're not to be treated, and that's why they treat us less than animals. That's why they use our babies as alligator bait, because they say we're cursed and we're supposed to always be slaves. Okay, they use this Bible for this. So we're going to talk about with the next show how to use the Bible for good instead of for hatred and barbaricness, lest some have chosen as an operation of Miranda, which is living in the flesh or their carnality. So I'm talking to the righteous and those who want to change. And if you want to look at our Facebook page, we do have a prayer for those who walk in homicide, gossip, lies, all that, pedophilia, all that. We have a prayer there for you, because there go, by the grace of God, there go I, and there's not one sin that's bigger than the rest. We want to thank Brother Allen for being here.
Thank
we
you.
want to thank KPO for such a wonderful time here. We're so glad that we have a platform to be a leader in purpose, not only to ourselves, but also to others. But I thank God too that hopefully we can get this message out to others that, you know, we as America, we need to fix these things. These things have been going on for 400 years. And my people, melanated people, are dying literally, and by barbaric people who care not for anything but profit before life. And I don't think those people need to be reigning. I don't think those people need to be in power. I don't think those people need to have a say. I think they need to be they're brainwashed, and they need to be you know, when you come from war, you're reverent, and so they have to put you either go away for like 2 or 3 or 4 months to be calmed down. Those people need some help. So we're going to talk about it next. Thank you for being here. We appreciate you. Leaders in Purpose, we are so glad you're here. Bye.